Welcome back, sickos, to another episode of Necessary Roughness right here on the Bite Size Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, John, joined by my lovely co-host, Ben Parker of Sports and Money KC on YouTube, among other things. Ben, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. We, again, have more to talk about than we can get to on tonight's show, NFL-wise, but we are alerted. I'm doing great.
Yes, sir. It is an eventful news day. We were just talking pre-show how we keep getting just pummeled with news on Tuesdays to a point where we can't really cover many individual games, but that's all right. That's just as fun. So I wanted to start this one with the only team I think that made multiple acquisitions today. Our good buddy Simon's team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The first move, which I think we can tie in a few other moves at that position, was trading a fifth for receiver Mike Williams from the Jets. This one kind of felt like it was in the works for a couple of weeks. I think he was put on the block the same week they traded for Devontae, and held on to him till the last moment. Might have squeezed the orange a little bit to get that fifth round pick, but between that move and kind of the other receiver additions we've seen in the last week or two, how do you feel about what Mike Williams could bring to this Steelers offense the rest of the season?
I like it. It doesn't feel earth-shaking to me anyway, but I do like that they're bringing in another veteran to kind of work with Russell Wilson. I hate to bring this up. Kind of reminds me of Aaron Rodgers adding veterans to his receiving core, which hasn't so far gone so well. But the Steelers are rolling right now. The Steelers are playing very well. Russell Wilson is making throws we haven't seen him make since back in Seattle. Consistent throws, right? Not every once in a while, but consistent throws. He's throwing the football well the past couple of games. So I like that you added that in, but it doesn't feel earth-shaking. How healthy, how fast is Mike Williams going to continue to be as the season goes along? But the price is right. You mentioned these low numbers on these draft picks, man. Good gracious. If you're looking to add to the team a little bit, a veteran, even if it's just for half a season, but maybe you got him on contract for 2 seasons if you want him, it costs you nothing, man. You really almost have nothing to lose if you're just kind of looking to add a little bit of depth to the roster or add a little wrinkle to your offense or defense.
Yeah, I agree. I think, especially with Mike to Pittsburgh with Wilson under center now, it's a guy who does a lot of his damage outside the numbers along the boundary, which is where Russell Wilson likes to throw it. So now you've got, Calvin Austin is going to kind of be your, kind of Zay Flowers type of role almost, I feel like, with a lot of crossing routes, a lot of your underneath yak kind of stuff, your bubble screens. And now you've got two guys who can really win up the sideline at the catch point. And Russell, that beautiful rainbow deep ball he's known for is back in effect. He's slinging that thing, and you've got two guys who can really do some damage in those one-on-one situations between him and George Pickens. So I like the fit more than I like, the talent addition in a vacuum. I think I don't think there's a ton of tread left on the tires with Mike. Not necessarily as much due to his age, injury history, and how prone he feels to those with it being a big body receiver. But I like that one. Jeffrey, how you doing, man? Thanks for tuning in. As you guys kind of jump into the chat here, let us know what your favorite move was of today, or just favorite trade throughout the season here. We had a flurry of them today, but also a couple big time ones in the preceding week. So let us know what your favorite move was and why. Give us something extra to talk about. But another thing the Steelers did, and actually real quick, what was funny about the Mike Williams value, as well as the move for a receiver is Jonathan Mingo went to Dallas for a 4th-round pick earlier. I think he has like 14 catches on the season. He was kind of a lot of people's, a lot of draft enthusiasts' favorite day 2 receiver in that class, and hasn't really panned out. And yeah, this is right on time there, Jeff. Yeah, the Panthers getting a 4th for Jonathan Mingo was actually incredible. Really, 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 really savvy move. I don't know what Jerry's thinking, frankly. And now it looks like Dak might miss some time. So now you pull the trigger on a receiver. Whatever, that's not a point we need to belabor too much. But a move I think I liked even more, just because I'm a sucker for the Steelers defense, is the Preston Smith addition to that edge rotation. We haven't heard a ton from Preston Smith so far this season. Like not the big years he's had in the past. But if you're familiar with Brandon Thorne, who does some work with Duke Manyweather and big time O-line or trenches guy, on the snaps he's watched, he said that Preston Smith still has a lot of gas and still really effective in one-on-ones. And going over to Pittsburgh, I mean, he's going to be part of a 4-horse rotation on the edge with Herbig and Highsmith and TJ Watt. That pass rush is going to be fresh all season, all the rest of the season. In addition to Cam Hayward and those guys on the inside as well that have been really effective. Like that Steelers front just got even better, adding a veteran presence. Like he could have an impact, sort of like the, when Justin Houston went to Baltimore a couple years ago, or even his stint in Indy. Now kind of as his career starts to wane, still an effective player, especially if he's going to be on a snap count. Were you surprised at the move for Pittsburgh to add along the defensive front in particular? Even just kind of taking the player out of it, was that something that surprised you? Just kind of doubling down on the strength.
It actually was, and I don't mind them doing it because again, the price is right. What have you got to lose here? I have no problem with them doing it. I'm glad they did it. But it did surprise me if I was going to look at places to upgrade the Steelers roster, it wouldn't be defensive line, right? Now, I know Highsmith has been banged up, and I know that Herbig has been banged up as well. And maybe there's just a feeling in the building that, hey, these are kind of nagging injuries. We just want a little more depth. I'm totally fine with it. But it did surprise me because defensive line is one of the strengths of Pittsburgh, right, of the whole freaking team, for crying out loud. I mean, I don't know if they've got a better position group than defensive line. And we especially look at defensive tackle too, but I'm okay with it. I'm more than happy for them to keep adding in these pieces, especially when there's no risk on the draft pick side. They'll figure out the money next year whether or not they want to keep some of these players.
Yeah, I agree. It's just a little bit of insurance. It kind of ensures that that strength is going to stay a strength, whether it's through nagging injuries or just keeping those guys fresher and and having some hockey lines on the edge there. And this is a perfect segue, this comment from Jeff here, into the Marshon Lattimore to Washington trade. A little disappointed the Chiefs didn't go get Greg Newsome, he said. That was a guy that I was kind of thinking of for the Vikings, maybe if they were going to do something. But it sounds like the Chiefs were in on the Lattimore sweepstakes. To a point anyway. Commanders end up giving up a 4th and a 6th to go get him. 28 years old, might be a little past his absolute prime, but still a really solid corner. And frankly, for the Saints to get that return with all of the young depth you have at particularly outside corner, the way those younger guys, Paulson Adebo and so on, have been playing, I think that's really good value. And, I'm not sure how much they really lose at that position, at least going forward. You kind of, you lose your ace, but allows those guys to kind of grow into that role. I liked it for the Saints, and I really like it for Washington. It gives you with how explosive their offense has been, to make an addition, particularly in the secondary, I think was really, really smart. Because now it's, they're going for it at this point. And he might be a guy that, they can get 2-3 years out of as Jaden Daniels continues to ascend here. So that one I really liked. Did you have a vested interest in your Chiefs going to get Lattimore, or were there any other teams that were on your radar to get him? Because Washington was a little bit of a curveball for me, despite the reporting. I just felt like they were going to get outbid and maybe be a little less serious than some contenders.
So I'll real quick on the Chiefs, then I want to hit the Commanders. I'm glad the Commanders ultimately didn't pick up Lattimore. I'm sorry, the Chiefs ultimately didn't pick up Lattimore because of financial reasons. So I follow the Chiefs' money lines a lot here. Their money continues to be complicated. It's why Za'Darius Smith was gone last offseason. I actually wanted them to keep Snead. It may be an issue come playoff time when they're playing a really hot offense that they don't have a guy like a Snead or Lattimore. But still, overall finances, it's better that they stayed away from that, even though it's good for them to be shopping around for a good deal to improve the team any way they can. You get to the Commanders, though. I keep waiting for this Commanders defense to get exposed because roster-wise, you look at the secondary and you look at the edgers, and they are not up to normal NFL standards when you look at the individual pieces. But dadgummit, Dan Quinn just won't let them get exposed. He's got them schemed up too good right now. I mean, goodness gracious, they are fantastic. So, but I like that they acknowledge the fact that on the personnel side of things, they're short on that secondary, and adding in Lattimore can do nothing but help. It's fantastic. And I got to give a shout out here, probably who you're pointing to. Lee Harding is racking up the Cowboys, and Jeffrey's racking up the Cowboys here too. So Cowboys easy to make fun of, man. Just too easy.
Yep. Yeah. Low hanging fruit if you want to be critical of the top of an organization right now. But I really like it for Washington and for Dan Quinn as well, because when this Dan Quinn defense is at its best, it's out of single high structures in the secondary. It's cover 1 and cover 3, and a really strong boundary corner like Marshon Lattimore, who can still really stick in man. He's not afraid to press. He's real feisty. Through the stem of the route and the release, as well as at the catch point. I think it gives them, or gives Dan Quinn a lot more leverage when he's kind of deciding what he's going to call, and in certain situations. Now you've got some confidence to throw some zero at some opposing teams on passing downs. You've got the confidence to, go and rotate your coverages from a 2 high to a single high look, and have a guy who can recover as like a cloud corner in those kind of situations, or recover to the boundary and not really get beat at the line of scrimmage through the release and the stem of the route. So the fit for Dan Quinn, as well as just the talent upgrade, I think is huge for Washington, who, like I said, is starting to go for it right now. One of the best records in the league, and quarterback on a rookie deal. Yeah, let's invest in the rest of the roster and see what we can build. Really like what I'm seeing from them. And then, this move was kind of already in pencil for a lot of folks. Za'Darius to Detroit, and it just got inked over today, finally. This, as soon as Aiden Hutchinson went down, people were pointing to Za'Darius as an option. Some more calculated opinions were Za'Darius. A lot of people, were like, oh, Max Crosby, we're going to get or, Trey Hendrickson or whatever, as the Bengals were still kind of floundering a couple weeks back. But instead of a real number one, they get a veteran guy who you can move inside and out as a pass rusher. Does a lot of his best damage rushing over guards from a 2-point stance on late downs. So I think it gives Aaron Glenn and Detroit, similarly to in Washington, a lot more flexibility on the back end, because they've got a strong secondary. You've got good man corners, and Detroit loves to play man when they can. You've got Carlton Davis and Terrion Arnold and Brian Branch in the star position, who you can really weaponize now if, Za'Darius can kind of get some of his fastball back. The advanced metrics aren't as great for him this year as, the last kind of 2-3 year stretch. But, if he's able to add some more juice to that pass rush, along with guys like Josh Pascal, Anwuzurike, and Aleem McNeil, who've been generating some pressure from the interior, all of a sudden that defense feels like a much more complete unit, even though you don't have an Aiden Hutchinson left in there. But now you've got a guy who teams are going to have to pay attention to. They're probably going to slide to more often than not. And if you're getting home quicker, you guys don't have to stick in man as long, and you're more empowered. With Detroit, obviously they're going for it right now, looking like, a lot of teams have them power ranked ahead of the Chiefs, even with a loss, just by the way they beat the shit out of you. Like, it's kind of one of those teams where it just is like, well, I mean, like, if they were to match up with anybody across the league, there's not many teams who I feel like could be as tough. And in the war of attrition, it doesn't seem like there's an instance where the Detroit's going to lose, especially late in the season. So with this addition here, does this move the needle much for you for Detroit, or does it alter your opinion of them defensively or as a whole at all? Or, is this something that's just kind of laissez-faire to you as far as just getting another guy in the building?
So for me, and by the way, if some of y'all are wondering why I laugh at odd times when maybe Johnny's making a great technical point, it's because somebody here in our chat room is doing something like Nate saying the Vikings are the worst, trolling your Minnesota team, man. So that's what's going on there. So,
he's good for one of those.
Yeah, thank you, Nate. Thank you. Derby's in the building too, I see. So I like this move for Detroit because, Johnny, you mentioned it. Nobody's expecting an Aiden Hutchinson type of constant pressure or problem causing from Za'Darius Smith here, and everybody predicted this trade. But where I do like it, if the Lions get all the way to the Super Bowl, say against the Ravens or the Chiefs or maybe even perhaps Buffalo, you've got a legit hardcore football player plugged in here, and you don't have a rookie that you're wondering about, is he going to miss an assignment? You've got a veteran here who by that time should know all of his assignments, even with a new team, new D, right? So I love that. I think that's so important, and he's legit able to plug that position, even though nobody's expecting him to be Aiden Hutchinson. And then I love it from an energy standpoint. We've seen Major League Baseball teams do this for decades. NFL teams only over the past 5-6 years started picking up on this. It adds so much energy to the building when you start bringing in names that people know, and you're like, yes, we're not only good, we're adding people to the party now, So from an energy standpoint, I love it. But going back, I just love that they got in a legit football player here who plugs that hole and who's probably not going to make too many rookie-type mistakes or second-year, fifth-round draft pick kind of mistakes. I love it for both of those things, man.
Yeah, with you there. Let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum as far as energy is concerned. And let's go to of the week here. And we're going to call this segment Allen Wrenched. Dennis Allen fired by the Saints, off to it's a 2-6 start now. I think it was their fifth consecutive loss. And it's tough. It's similar to me a little bit anyway to the Saleh firing, where it's like the defense has been okay. They're 15th in EPA per play allowed, actually just outside the top 10 in EPA per pass. Granted, they just got rid of Marshon Lattimore, who was a big part of that, but it's one of those things where it's like, he might still be a strong coordinator for a long time. He might still be a really good defensive mind, but as the head coach, CEO of the football team, bringing the staff in, quality control kind of stuff, and just kind of having the locker room behind you. That might just be some areas where he doesn't excel as much. And he had a short stint coaching the Raiders decade ago or so. And this one hasn't bore much fruit for him either. And it's tough with the Saints too, because organizationally it's kind of a sinking ship. Um, it's a very slowly sinking ship that the whole crew is constantly shoveling water out of, just buckets full of water. They're constantly trying to get the water out. And they just, if they had a shop vac, they might have a chance. But these restructures and these, all these kicking the can and these veteran additions, Tyrann Mathieu, and we're Cam Jordan's still going to be our edge one, and what they did to now. With the offensive line, they're reinvesting. They bring in Derek Carr to kind of try and salvage this aging core and this expensive core. And Dennis Allen was tasked with keeping them afloat. And he's been trying to find a lighthouse for a season and a half at this point. And I think he's just gonna salute and go down with it. And it's tough to put all of it on him, because I think he had a rough hand coming into it, but it's been mismanaged as well. We saw what they were able to do early in the season, when Clint Kubiak was, kind of firing on all cylinders and that offense was working. It's something he hasn't been able to, be a rising tide for. Even if he's been fine as a coach. There's probably some internal stuff we don't know about as well, but Lee said he lasted 2 weeks longer than he thought he should. And I think the writing was on the wall, maybe even earlier than that. I think he was really, saved by those first two demonstrative wins early in the season. When people still thought the Cowboys were good, they were like, "Oh, look at what they did to the Cowboys." So I don't know. That was a rough one. But what was your knee-jerk reaction to the Allen firing? And now we've had a day or so to ponder on it. What do you think it means for the Saints as an organization, for Dennis Allen as a coach, and where do they go from here?
So I was in favor of letting Dennis Allen go. I didn't think he was horrible as a head coach, but I didn't think he was good either. And by the time you put into view these 7 straight losses, especially losing to Carolina, obvious nail in the coffin there, that really kind of finished everything off. So no surprises here. You're right about the Saints. I've been ragging on them for probably 2 or 3 off seasons here with their finances. They keep wanting to kind of keep things alive, keep an old rock band together that never was really good in the first place. And you're kind of like, well, what's the point? You're also seeing the flip side of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because the Buccaneers have run their finances similarly, but not as extreme. But the Buccaneers are finding ways to be on the kind of the plus side and playoff side of this thing, while the Saints are finding ways to be on the negative side and kind of the losing side of this. So similar patterns, but the Saints more extreme, and the Saints losing instead of winning here. So no surprises there. The Saints, it is time to move on from a lot of these players. Don't get rid of a player that you need next year that will help you compete. But these veterans that you really can't afford and shouldn't have extended in the first place, go ahead and trade them and move on. That's the best thing here. That was been my take for quite a while now.
That's a really interesting comparison, comparing to the Bucs from a team building standpoint, because I hadn't really thought of that, but you're exactly right. They did the same thing, bringing over a retread quarterback in Baker Mayfield. He turned out to be a lot more effective than Derek Carr. And another key difference for them is, I think, because Jason Light kind of brought the whole gang back after the Super Bowl, and that was doubling down with the two big time receivers, keeping both of them in the building. There were some rumblings about Godwin, letting Godwin walk and whatever. He gets a big extension, but they've also drafted really well through this, kind of extending the window frame of time they've been in, and not even necessarily really big hits in the draft. They've just been able to consistently add contributors. Luke Gadecki, opposite Tristan Wirfs at tackle. Couple young guys in the pass rush rotation, and Yaya Diaby and Kalijah Cansey. Baker Mayfield, of course, has been great and developed great chemistry with these pass catchers. Cade Otton was a great pick. Rashad White and Bucky Irving are a really good running back duo. Suddenly, Bucky Irving was one of the most fun players to watch run in the league right now, in my opinion. But they've retooled around everything a lot better, and Baker Mayfield's been a lot more of a ceiling raiser than Derek Carr, frankly. But I really like that comparison. There's a right way and a wrong way to do this, and the Saints just keep doubling and tripling down on what's widely considered to be the wrong way to go about this, kind of trying to extend your window with a given core. And, this is what happens. You get your head coach fired, and I think more heads might roll within that organization. Another organization that's fledgling a little bit, despite having much more promise going forward, is the Bears. I hope Nate's still in the chat here. Swine flus. There is a sickness in the Bears organization, and a lot of it stems from Matt Eberflus, and this is very similar to the Dennis Allen situation. It's like, yeah, this is a good defensive coach, but he's the head coach now. So the buck is going to stop with him, even on the offensive side. And Shane Waldron, I think, for as much kind of hype as he had coming over from Seattle to coach the offense here and call plays, it hasn't been great. I think they're and for his development, I think there are pros and cons, but a lot has been put on Caleb Williams' plate. Identifying the mic, setting protections, all this stuff he has to do pre-snap, and then you've also set him up behind a dog shit offensive line that and the old parts of which are doing a lot better elsewhere. Cody Whitehair looks good outside of Soldier Field. Like these are kind of those little moves that really start to add up, and they also did what they keep doing when they get a rookie quarterback is they hold over the coach from a failed regime. Nagy was still there when you drafted Justin Fields. Eberflus is still there when you drafted Caleb Williams. Instead of just wiping the slate clean like Washington did, bringing in Cliff, bringing in Dan Quinn, and just wiping the slate clean, getting new energy, new play callers, new everything just from the top down, and saying, all right, we're starting fresh. This is your team, rookie quarterback, go do it. There's too much just residual, like, shitty team vibes, I think, around the Bears still. And even all the talent they brought in, I still thought in the offseason, I really liked a lot of the moves they made, but I never thought their ceiling was high because of how bad the trenches are on both sides of the ball. And the defensive front is getting there. Javon Dexter coming into his own. Montez Sweat is a stud when healthy, and their linebackers are good. It's not enough, and especially the offensive line when you're just forcing Caleb Williams into these goofy scramble drills and all this stuff. Which he could do at the collegiate level, but there's a lot more speed here in the NFL. You can't have him running for his life and expect him to, to drive competent offense consistently. It's just not going to be the case. And you've seen him turn it on. The last 2 drives he had against Washington to get them back into the game, to tie it back up, both of those drives were fantastic. But they couldn't do anything leading up to that. And that's the only reason they were in that position. That's a game they should have won. And without even talking about the Tyreek Stevenson stuff, and now DJ Moore is running off the field mid-play, and I don't know if he stepped out of bounds and realized he was going to be have an illegal touching if he catches the ball, or what he was doing, but there's weird stuff going on, and it seems like an undisciplined football team. And again, that buck stops with Matt Eberflus. Looking at that situation, and there's a few others around the league. Is he do you feel like he's might be the next one to get fired? And if not, or even if so, what other coaches are kind of on your radar to get canned here pretty soon with the situations they've led their teams into?
So I'm with you on just about everything you said. I like what the Bears have done the past 2 or 3 seasons from a talent standpoint. Man, I really, really like it. I like all the pieces they added on the offensive line, man. I liked those players they brought in, and yet they're not performing very well, which makes you look back at the coaching staff, to me. But then more specifically, Matt Eberflus, unfortunately, is the CEO of all of this, kind of overlooking all of it, and he's in charge of the defensive side. So, yeah, I was in favor of letting Eberflus go last offseason. I understand why they didn't, but I was in favor of that. I was kind of pushing for that. Didn't happen. So I'm not surprised here that it just kind of looks sick. The non-competitive nature the past couple of weeks is what's really pissed me off here about the Bears. It's not that they're up and down or inconsistent. It's just non-competitive a little bit. That's bothered me for several quarters here. So that bothers me. The talent is here. I like what the GM has done for the most part for the Bears the past 2 or 3 seasons. So it's got to be the coach, and unfortunately for Eberflus, yeah, I think he's on his way out. Mike McCarthy probably won't get fired mid-season or anything, but the Cowboys aren't going to fire Jerry Jones. They're not going to fire his son. They're not going to fire anybody else in that inner circle of hierarchy Cowboys-wise. So guess who's out the door? It's going to be Mike McCarthy, if they let go of anybody. So unfortunate for him, but that would be a couple of my next names there. But I'm with you all the way on the Eberflus thing.
Yeah, I think the Vikings have an opportunity to get another coach fired this season. Going up against Jacksonville coming up this week. Doug could be out. They put the nail in Salah's coffin apparently over in London. Could put a second one on the board here this season. Hang that banner. And I agree with McCarthy too. This funny thing about Jerry Jones is he gets weirdly married to these coaches. Like he rode Jason Garrett into the absolute ground. There were like 6 seasons where it's like, oh, Jason Garrett might get fired. So I really doubt that one comes mid-season as well. But I think Jerry Jones is going to be doing a lot of reflecting this offseason. Or at least he very well should be. Jeff brings up another interesting candidate in Kevin Spanksky. Kevin Stefanski of the Browns. You wonder how much of a hand he had in staying so committed to Deshaun as your quarterback, despite the on-field product. You wonder how much of the locker room he lost in doing that. But I think that's a team that should probably be cleaning house, really from general manager down as soon as possible. I doubt I kind of doubt that one's mid-season too. But I think that's coming around the bend as well. Lee's got a good list for us here too.
The chat is on fire tonight, man. Good gracious. These guys are just on fire. But, yeah, Lee's got quite a list here with
appreciate you guys.
What did it say, 9, 10 teams? Man. Wouldn't surprise me either.
He said earlier too.
And I'm sorry, I don't remember whose podcast it was. I heard somebody say that they
Oh,
thought
you're
there was a chance that Nick Sirianni might actually get fired while he's winning a football game because of the way they let the Jaguars back into that game.
yeah. No, that's funny. I could see it too. It's another one of those cases where it's like, he might not be a bad coach in a vacuum necessarily, but is this the guy who's going to maximize this group for you? Because that hasn't been the case to this point in the season. They've looked really, really good for stretches. But there's no reason that this team should, like, he's also just kind of clueless about certain things. Like you'll get shots of him on the sideline just being like in the Jags game. You literally saw him say, "Oh, we're going for 2? Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Go for 2. All right. 2 sounds good." Like he's not even really making those decisions. You like real I don't know. It's tough, but yeah, that's something. Colts with Steichen. Yeah. It's there's, there's a lot of seemingly poorly run outfits this season. Particularly over there. I've got my final punny, annoying segment title for us. Maybe it's May Lean. I think the Patriots have their franchise quarterback. I was a huge fan of Drake May throughout the draft process. I liked him better than Caleb even. I just did. Just be, it like the two of them, and these are loose comparisons, but just to do with like body type and play style, the two of them were very much like Mahomes, Allen, Williams, and May to me. And I just felt like Mahomes was so fucking anomalous that there was no way that Caleb Williams playing that style was going to reach the same heights, even though I think he's going to be a very good quarterback. I just think that the skill set of Drake May as a baseline, you might have a narrower range of outcomes, but they're kind of on a higher plateau. I think the floor is higher for the way Drake May plays, even though he's audacious and has a lot of arm arrogance and a lot of foot arrogance. Frankly, the way he plays, he's very confident in his athletic ability. He's going to take some risks, but I think he's got all of the talent to do it. And mentally, especially with like a poor supporting cast around him to this season, like that's what I was really worried about is like, well, you can't throw him in there behind, with this offense necessarily and expect good results. But he's been really solid in his couple of starts, and just juxtaposed to Jacoby Brissett operating the exact same offense. I think Jacoby Brissett is a very solid quarterback. Like at any given time, he's probably the 28th to 36th best quarterback in the league. Like he can operate an offense, but he looks better. And just even outside of that ridiculous, what was it, 13 seconds of time to throw on the game tying touchdown to Ramondre Stevenson, that was an unreal play. He shook Arden Key out of his shoes, like just out of his peripheral. Just that feel he has, extending plays. He had 95 yards on the ground, which is the most scramble yards for a quarterback this season. Lamar's had more, Jaden's had more, including some designed runs, but 95 scramble yards for Drake May. I know you're a draft guy as well. With what we've seen from Drake May this season, when he's been on the field, kind of compared to your draft takes, how do you feel about his performance within this offense and really the outlook for him as the Patriots quarterback going forward?
So I liked him in the draft, and I like him now. I had Caleb Williams as my top guy, the guy I would move up for. And then I liked MAYE and I liked Daniels, but I was like, well, I still see enough problems with their games to where I would be hesitant to just trade the whole franchise to go get them, right? That's where I was. But I liked MAYE. I like what I've seen. He's aggressive. I like that. He's got a good live arm. I like that. He's fast. I like that. And while you can still question, the interceptions, the sacks, and the actual ability to turn yardage into points, he's moving the football. So anytime you see a guy this young who can move the football up and down the field like legit, he's not just being kind of babied the way they're doing it over in Denver right now. He's legit moving the football up and down the field. You got to feel good, man. You've really, honestly, all right, the chat room is just getting out of control tonight, but I love it.
Sorry, Frank Reichen got me.
You got to feel good about Drake MAYE moving forward. Now, can he improve that stuff? He can, but he's got it to do, right? So, but you're seeing what a rookie quarterback looks like when he's got the goods, but he just needs some improving. So I like it. And you mentioned he ain't got nothing to work with. Who's he got to throw to, and who's he got blocking for him? And the defense is stinking it up too, which I was surprised at. So, he's kind of the spotlight there in New England, but I love it so far.
Yeah, he had a ball to Demario Douglas on a sail route, or it might have even been. It was up the right sideline. I think it was just a big sail route out of the slot. And man, the placement on that thing down the field was unreal. And Demario made a good catch and a good adjustment. I mean, if he gets some guys around him that are creating separation consistently, man, I think they're going to look really, really good offensively, especially the way they've been able to run the ball really over the past 2 seasons. Even you could even go back a little bit further. That identity has never really left this team. Since they kind of turned over from Brady, they've just decided, all right, well, we're going to run the football kind of until we get a quarterback we're confident enough in to really sling it. And Drake MAYE can spin the pill, and he's really tough. He finishes runs as a quarterback, which is another like Josh Allen flash I see in him, where he's just like, all right, I'm not going down. I'm just going to rumble right into you and fall forward for another yard or two. Already 20 yards past the line of scrimmage. So I like the energy he plays with. And I really like a guy who's just not afraid to play off schedule, extend plays, but keep his eyes downfield, take what he can get on the ground when he does so. But also who, in structure, can really make some incredible throws, and he's got some great zip on it. He threw a couple of frozen ropes against – and this was a good Titans defense. For all we can say about, the Titans in general, the Titans as a whole, Will Levis, the whole thing, their defense is at the very worst solid, and they've got a good front that put pressure on them. They've got some real players on the back end who, might be a little bit past their prime, but between Snead and Awuzie and Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs, like this is a good group. That again, he made some mistakes, but I think he had a really good performance against them overall. Like you said, he was moving the ball. And in a season like this, that's the main thing you want to see. But you know what? I think, we might not have time for our final segment, but let's really quick talk a little bit about the Chargers.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Okay. So this is a team that for all the shitty takes I had preseason, this is one by which I feel pretty vindicated. I was pretty emphatic that I thought Harbaugh was going to get here and immediately turn this thing around and get them playing winning football, just as he does in every new stop he makes, even going back to Stanford when he got there and turned that program around. And they have. I mean, selecting Joe Alt is looking like maybe one of the 3 or 4 best picks of the draft at this point, putting him opposite Slater when the two of them are healthy. has done wonders for Justin Herbert, kicking Pipkins into guard at times. That group's rounding out. I loved Zion Johnson coming out, and he's slowly starting to improve. The offensive line is good. Greg Roman came in and talked to Harbaugh for a second, and he was like, "Oh, you want to run the ball? Listen, I got two guys. I know I can get on the phone right now, and they're going to come and run hard as fuck." And he brought him in. You're running this Greg Roman offense now with a guy who's a really, really good pure pocket passer. Not that Lamar is not, and he's really gotten better too with since the Ravens moved on from Roman and went to Todd Monken. But when that Roman offense was in Baltimore, it was like, yeah, we're gonna run it down your throat. We're gonna play power football. We're gonna have the QB designed runs, and that's gonna be a big part of it. But I think the playbook wasn't extensive enough to really be able to win on the chessboard in January. But now when you've got Justin Herbert operating that thing, the running game's working, and more importantly, under Mike Minter. I think Mike Minter's the dad. There's a chance I have that backward, but coming from Michigan as well, man, that defense is so much better than it was under Brandon Staley and all the Fangio stuff he was doing. They've got similar principles now, but you go from Sebastian Joseph Day and not much other meat in the middle to suddenly you go out and you get Poona Ford and Tyre Tart, and you stick them both in the middle. Khalil Mack looks almost as good as he ever has. Probably only looks worse than like 2016 in Oakland and like his first season with the Bears in 2018 under Fangio. He looks great. He's like 10th in pressure rate, doing great things. Asante Samuel Jr. Cam Hart out of Notre Dame is playing really good ball. Derwin James and Alohi Gilman on the back end. I mean, this team, especially the defense, like well outperforming what their personnel looked like on paper coming into this. And this is just kind of what I was banking on, is just the rising tide of Harbaugh lifting all boats. You made some personnel tweaks. You made some big coaching changes, and suddenly this looks like a real team. Sitting at 5-3, they gave the Chiefs a run for their money. Not that all their opponents haven't a little bit to this point in their undefeated season, but you've seen this team up close and personal twice a year throughout your whole fandom. What are your takes on the Chargers, and out of the rest of the teams in the AFC, where do they kind of stack up with as far as like threats to your Chiefs both this season and in the short-term future, the next couple of years?
See, I was one of the few people who, like you, was on the Chargers boat a little bit during the offseason. I said 9-8. They will squeak into the playoffs. That was my official pick, and my reason for it was what you just said, is that Harbaugh instantly brings physicality and cuts out the foolish mistakes. He gets rid of all that crap, and we're just going to be physical as all get out, and we're going to not make a whole bunch of stupid, dumb mistakes, And now, how good can they be in the AFC? I think there's a ceiling here. I think they're going to kind of hit a talent bump here, maybe second round of the playoffs. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they don't win in the first round, and then maybe in that second round they just kind of get outgunned by somebody. It's kind of where I'm figuring it. And it'll be like, we'll see you next year and we'll get our payback next year is what I'm looking at here for the Chargers. But, man, you're 100% right. The defense looks like what everybody expected the defense to look like over the past 2 or 3 seasons. I mean, it looks outstanding. The offense has been kind of slower, to be honest. But I'll tell you what, the Chargers have a point differential right now, plus 58. And they haven't necessarily got a 30 or 40-point win to just throw all of that point differential on. It's kind of like they're chomping up these different teams. It reminds me of Pac-Man from the 80s, where it's just chomp, 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 chomp. They're just kind of chewing up some of these teams in the grinder, playing the kind of football I like. And just wait till next year when Harbaugh's got more of his kind of guys on offense to do what he likes to do. So it's outstanding. Just absolutely love what we're seeing out of the Chargers here so far.
Yeah, I agree. And they're not going to try to get into a shootout with anybody right now. It's just not their identity. They're going to drag you down into the mud with them and make you play the football they want to play. If your arrows are going to blot out the sun, they will fight in the shade, and they're just ass kickers on both sides of the ball. They're a really fun team to watch if you like it old school, But yeah, all right, brother. Well, I will. We'll get to our outro here. I know you got another show coming up, but real quick, let the viewers know where else they can find you and all your great work.
So we just finished an hour ago. I've got 4 shows tonight. We just finished Sports and Money KC on YouTube. So go check it out. We've got Struggle Bus. We've got a guessing game with 2 of our panelists where we look at defensive EPA against the run, being able to stop the run, good defenses against the run. We talk about Dennis Allen. We've got, I think I mentioned the Struggle Bus already. We've got lead story, back story, you name it, all over there. Listen, your arrows in the sky and fighting the shade outdoes anybody in the chat tonight, and the chat has been on fire. So hats off to everybody who came into the chat room tonight. They were killing it. I love that. But yeah, I love your battle metaphor there. That's outstanding.
Yeah, it's a good. Got to pull a 300 quote out when you have the opportunity. Yeah, thank you to everybody in the chat. You guys have been great. Really fun to interact with you guys, especially with a news heavy episode here. But yeah, outside of here, you'll obviously catch me here every Tuesday at 9/8 Central. Here and there, you'll catch me on Supersize Sports on Thursdays with Kev, talking a little football, talking a little basketball, and whatever other fringe sports topics come up that week. You can also find my written work on zonecoverage.com covering the Vikings. Just published a piece today summarizing the Colts game, which was ugly, but Sam Darnold giveth and Sam Darnold taketh away. That was really exemplary of that phrase we've had this year. But I've also got a film review piece coming out on the offense, which should publish Thursday, and a film piece on the defense, which should publish Friday. So if you're interested in what Brian Flores is doing, if you're interested in what Kevin O'Connell is doing, definitely check those out later in the week on zonecoverage.com/Vikings. But until next time, again, thank you to everybody who watched at home, commented. Like the video on your way out if you haven't already. That'll help us a ton. And we'll see you guys next week. If I could ever end the stream promptly,
it's better this way, man. It really is.
We might actually start. Yeah, there's probably so many screenshots of just my dumbass face trying to get off live. All right, thanks, guys. This is Necessary Roughness on Bite Size Sports. I'm an idiot. We'll see you.